So, before we jump into the top 20 running backs, guys, anybody that stood out to you this fantasy season in the running back position?
Do you consider Deebo Samuel a running back?
No, I do not. That's why he's not on this list. But and Patterson as well. They from the NFL website, they are both listed as wide receivers. So that's the group I have them in as well.
See, I thought Patterson, though, before the season qualified himself as a running back over receiver.
For fantasy, but I'm just going by where the NFL has them listed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, kind of like baseball where a guy plays multiple positions. You can switch them around, but their MLB position only shows one. Moving into the top 10, we have coming in at number 10, Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers. It's tough to say that this is a disappointing year considering he finished in the top 10. We had him projected fifth. His yards, where we had him projected, were off by 300. His receptions were good, but his touchdowns close. Total of 12. He scored a total of 10. But yeah, just the yards were down there. Shawn, thoughts on Jones with the Packers?
Kind of like we've been saying with the other running backs, his ceiling is kind of where he is at right there. The 230 to 250 points per year is probably his ceiling right now in Green Bay, especially with having A.J. Dillon, who's sharing the backfield with him. That's the only problem I see with Aaron Jones' numbers is with A.J. Dillon, they use him inside the 2 to 3 yard line because of how big he is as a back. So to say his numbers are going to get any better, it's hard to say that. I would say he's pretty much where he's at, 800 to rushing and 400 receiving yards is probably about what he'll finish each year in Green Bay. If Aaron Rodgers isn't around, are those numbers going to change? Absolutely. But we don't know what could come about it. So depending what happens in Green Bay this offseason, it's hard to say what you could possibly want to do with him in fantasy if you have a redraft league. If you have him in a dynasty league, you might want to try to move him depending on how much you have him for.
Yeah, agreed. Jeremy, thoughts on Jones?
Yeah, I think it's I agree with that. I mean, don't raise the ceiling. If anything, just worry about what if his reception yards and touchdowns go down a little bit, and I could see him not even getting 4 touchdowns on the ground next year. It's all about, and I think he's going to come back, Aaron Rodgers. I do believe he's staying, but if he doesn't, it changes everything. This guy's kryptonite. Like if they go to Jordan Love as their quarterback, forget about this running back, unless you're taking him as a fly at the end. But do not count on anything you see in front of you without Rodgers there.
Yeah, I completely agree. If Rodgers isn't there, it's going to change a lot.
Coming in at number 9 on the 2021 season, we had Alvin Kamara. We had him projected third overall. I believe he missed 4 games. The biggest difference is here it looks like his receptions. We were way off on receptions and touchdowns. We had him projected at 13. He scored a total of 9. Guys, thoughts on Kamara's season and then what might happen in the offseason here?
He had 5 quarterbacks he played with this year. That made a big change in his receptions. His rushing yards, it didn't matter who was handing the ball off to him. The receiving side of it was what quarterback was throwing to him. If you would have had Jameis Winston all year, I think it would have helped him a lot with his numbers and the touchdowns aspect. My only concern is what's going to come about. Is he going to be a New Orleans Saint next year? Will he be in the NFL next year or suspended? That's the only thing is my worrisome with drafting him is what comes about in this offseason with his Pro Bowl issues that he had in Las Vegas.
Yeah, agreed. Jeremy, thoughts on Kamara's season and then looking forward to the offseason?
Well, I mean, he's on the wrong side of his peak, and that's, I mean, it's only because that's the way it is with running back. I mean, we're seeing it now more and more. There's a shorter lifespan and it doesn't mean, I mean, the legal problems aside, even without that, I would have said But depending on where he ends up, might be a touchdown machine kind of thing for a team in the right situation. Because situation means everything. You could be in a great situation and not be in your prime, but still put up a lot of fantasy points. But this is just a guy. It's until we know more, he's hard to draft. And a lot of times when you're not at your athletic peak anymore, and then you get into legal trouble, it just doesn't turn out nice. Like he comes back, and in the future, I don't think we're going to see the electric. I mean, you'll see it on occasion. He'll have moments where he shines, but I don't think you're going to see him as that top tier running back for fantasy points anymore. I think he's going to be just at best a good guy to have that'll have some big games for you. Again, we need to know the situation he's going to be in. He'll have moments when he gets through all this legal stuff. It's not like he's done, but he's done being one of those guys you draft really high and are excited about. I think those days are over for him. You're not going to see him, in the first round certainly, or even the second rounds of a draft anymore. I don't think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one for sure. He's definitely going to be a late round running back for sure if he's playing this upcoming year.
Right. Agreed on both of those takes. Keeping on moving here. Actually, a guy that surprised me where he ended up, Antonio Gibson from then the Washington football team, but now the Washington Commanders. We had him projected 11th. He finished 8th, yards almost exact. So let's see. I had him projected for 11 touchdowns. He scored 10. Shawn, thoughts on Gibson there in Washington?
He's a good fit there. He's definitely a really good fit for what they do with him in the running back game. And you figure in the beginning of the year, he was also sharing it with McKissick until he got injured, and then he took over fully. He was almost spot on for his yards, 1 yard off for his rushing yards. He was a little down on receiving wise, but the averages were there and his touchdowns were there that we predicted. So I like that side of the ball. I expect him to kind of where he averaged this year is where he's going to probably average for years to come. I don't know what his ceiling is yet completely. It's hard to say until you know what kind of team Washington's going to be in the future. The quarterback situation there. What we know, Ron Rivera likes to run the ball a lot. Look at him when he has CMC, and he likes to use his running backs out of the backfield a lot as well. So you could see the reception side of the ball coming up a lot higher in his next coming years. But I think 1,000 yards is kind of where Gibson's going to probably average in that division and with that team.
Jeremy, thoughts?
Yeah, I like him to at the floor to me is this, and it can only go up and get better depending on what they do at quarterback. I see him actually, if they solidify that quarterback position, we don't know what's going to happen. That's the thing. But I think if they stay the same and use the same guy, who actually surprised, their backup quarterback wasn't awful at all, then this is what you get. And it's solid and it's real. But if they bring in I don't know, like who's going to move and who's not, but if they were to bring in like a Russell Wilson or a Jimmy G or, something happens where they have a more significant quarterback, I think it only helps them. The better of the threat, if you start giving them a better threat as far as quarterback and they're becoming a more threatening passing game, I think it's going to help open up his, raise his average per yards per carry and put him in more positions to score touchdowns. So I think you're getting what you draft here at worst, and there's upside to get better.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one for sure. I definitely think that he can improve depending on the quarterback situation. It just comes down to it is what quarter do they draft this year, or do they kind of hoping they can get free agency or trade? So I could see honestly them even maybe making a trade with Detroit and possibly even trying to bring Jared Goff in.
Yeah, so lots to keep an eye on there in Washington. But let's keep moving here. Coming in at number 7, Once again, just like our quarterbacks, we had Dak Prescott perfectly ranked at number 7 for quarterbacks, and that's where he finished. And for running backs, we had Ezekiel Elliott ranked at 7th, and he finished 7th as well. Shawn, thoughts on Zeke there in Dallas?
I don't think he's going to get much better there in Dallas with his numbers. The only thing I can think improving would be touchdown-wise. With Tony Pollard coming out now slowly and solidifying himself as a running back there in Dallas, I think that you're going to see less touches for Zeke and more touches for Tony Pollard, just because Tony Pollard is one to go sideline to sideline and get upfield and change the pace of the game, where Zeke is just going up the middle, getting his 3-4 yards of carry, not really breaking 20, 30-yard runs anymore. I think Zeke's more the short game where Pollard can definitely change the pace there. And I don't think Zeke's going to have big games, big years anymore with Dallas.
Yeah. Jeremy, thoughts on Zeke in Dallas?
Agreed 100%. He's not going to get better.
Right.
He's only going to, the truth is a lot of people feel that Pollard's the better running back. And this is probably the last year of Zeke's guaranteed contract, like money, I think. Or
I think I thought he has 2 or 3 more years. I think when he signed it, I thought he signed a new contract where it was like a 5-year deal.
Coming in at number 6, a guy I was way off on our projections, Leonard Fournette there in Tampa Bay. I had him 35th overall. Your guys' thoughts on Fournette?
Yeah. Like I said to you before we went on live stream, I was kind of shocked with projection-wise for Fournette. It might have been because he didn't sign with Tampa Bay until closer to the year beginning. We weren't sure what he would be about. But you think about it, he missed, I think, the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, and he still had really good numbers. So for the fact that if he would have probably played those last 4 weeks, he probably would have been a 1,000-yard rusher and probably close to 500 yards receiving-wise. I know Tom Brady was doing a lot of the short passes to him out of the backfield, and he would get 5-6 yards each time, and that's why his receptions were so high. You figure 70 receptions for him is a really high number for a running back, especially with Tom Brady. So for only 180 rush attempts, and he had 812 yards, can you imagine if he would have had 200 rush attempts, 225, and what those numbers could have been? He probably would have been close to almost, if he played all the games this year, probably close to almost 15 total touchdowns, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Jeremy, thoughts on Fournette?
Yeah, I mean, it's the question mark is no more Brady, right? I mean,
Right.
What does it look like without Brady there? I mean, it's good to be a running back on a team with Tom Brady, and when you're a 3-down back, when you're the main guy. We didn't see that in New England much because they spread it around, but he had the opportunity to play against defenses that were trying to figure out how to stop Brady. How do you stop Gronk? How do you stop these receivers? They weren't stacking the box for the run. So we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback for Tampa Bay. So that could change his results. So I think he was in a really good situation. I'm not saying he's not talented. He's a talented dude, and he's worth a pick. Like, there's not many running backs left. I mean, it's a tough position, but so he's good and he gets points and everything. But I wouldn't be shocked if there was like a tail off, specifically with the receiving game. Like, don't be surprised if the receptions go all the way down under 50.
Yeah, and without Brady, I think that could be what happens. Honestly, I wouldn't even say 40 almost if he stays with Tampa, because I'm not. Is he under contract for another year with Tampa?
That's what I'm looking that up right now. No, Leonard Fournette is a free agent.
Yeah, so he might not even be there, honestly.
Man, yeah, he's only 27 years old. I feel like he's been in the league for forever.
5 years, I think. He played 3, I think, with Jacksonville and 2 at Tampa Bay.
So let's move on to number 5 here. We had number 5 from the Arizona Cardinals. We had James Conner, and what did it here was his 18 total touchdowns. We had him projected for 5, and we were a little off on his receiving stats, but man, touchdowns were way off. Shawn, your thoughts on Conner there in Arizona?
Yeah, the 18 touchdowns were mind-blowing. Other than that, his 1,000 yards on the year kind of was neutral for the year. If he would have probably averaged to 5-6 touchdowns like we predicted, he probably would have barely touched the top 20 in fantasy points. But the touchdowns definitely saved his season and definitely helped Arizona. When Edmonds got injured, it definitely was, this is James Conner's backfield. And then towards the end of the year, Conner started getting banged up from taking the ball and having the ball handed to him so many times. Same with the whole Arizona Cardinals offense. They were just getting banged up at the end of the year at the wrong time. Not saying you want your injuries at any point, but if you want them, you probably want them in week 1 through 6, 8. And then at the end of the year, you can kind of have your team together and stay strong. But he had a good year. I definitely don't think he'll have another year like that again, just because of the fact that he does share the running back field with Edmonds in Arizona. Unless he goes to another team, then he could do it again. But for sure in Arizona, I don't think he's going to have another year like that.
Yeah, agreed. Jeremy, thoughts on Connor?
100%. I mean, if you want to know what he's going to be next year, take those 15 touchdowns and make him 7.
Right.
That's about what, the best you're going to do. So make the 15-7, and everything else stays the same. Calculate the points, and that's who you got.
Yeah, you just got to kind of cut him in half. When you share the backfield with a guy twice for the same year, you're not going to have 18 touchdowns on one guy I think Edmonds only had like 4. So you got to kind of equal them out because that's pretty much what the team is probably going to end up doing.
Yeah, agreed. So let's move to number 4 here. At number 4, we had Joe Mixon from the Cincinnati Bengals. We had him at 10 overall yards, almost perfect. Once again, touchdowns seem to be where we're off. We had him at 10. He scored 16. But guys, thoughts on Mixon there in Cincinnati?
He was Joe Burrow's safe goat. When in doubt, when it was short gainage, he could trust Joe Mixon in the backfield. Same out of the backfield. If he needed a short gain and he could throw the ball for like 6-7 yards, that's where you were going to dunk it down to, knowing that it was going to be a safer bet than trying to throw a deep pass. He had a good year. I think he has a lot more in the tank for Joe Mixon, honestly. I think he could honestly be a 1,500-yard rusher next year, just for the fact that now the Bengals see what they have in him. This year with 1,200, and he's only getting better each year as his career has gone on since his rookie year. So I think that you honestly could see a 1,400 to 1,500-yard year out of him next year and kind of improve on this year as well.
Yeah, agreed. Jeremy, thoughts on Mixon and the Bengals?
Yeah, barring injury, you got a guy that's peaking, right? You got a guy that's going into his prime. These are going to be the prime years. Last year, this year, coming up, the year after that. I mean, maybe even the year after that. Like, this is the time for this player. It's the right time because it's the right time for the team. This is it. So this is a guy who's going to give you what you see right now from last year, or only building it better. So I agree 100%. I could see him jumping up to 1,500 yards. Touchdowns about the same. This is a solid, barring injury, solid pick. Like, he's going to be top 4 again, maybe a little higher than 4 even. So this is just a great pick, great player that you want on your fantasy team. There's very few running backs. So this is one of, I would say, the 4 even. Still be a surprise, obviously, and someone else in the back will step up and get better. But this is definitely no gambling here. Like, when you pick him high, there's a reason you're picking him high, and barring injury, it'll be a smart pick.
Right, and teams can't focus on Mixon there, just because of the other weapons that Cincinnati has. So yeah, definitely peaking at the right time in his career. Definitely top 5 running back next year in fantasy. Shawn, anything else?
No, I think he hasn't hit his ceiling yet for sure. I mean, there's a lot more that he can get out of him for sure, barring any major setbacks and injuries. I think there's a lot more you can definitely get.
Yeah, so let's look. Coming in at number 3, we had Najee Harris from Pittsburgh. Yards almost perfect. Touchdowns were right on. The thing we were off on was his receptions. For having 74 receptions, he only had 467 yards, so a little low on the average there. But guys, thoughts on Harris in his rookie year in Pittsburgh?
I thought he had a great year for a rookie, especially with Pittsburgh struggling there in the middle of the season there and beginning in the middle of the season, they were losing a lot of games and they were struggling. And I know Najee Harris had a lot of bad games there and where he wasn't getting like 50, 60 yards a game. But he had a great year receiving wise out of the backfield for Ben Roethlisberger. He's worth it. In a mid, like wouldn't draft him right off the bat for running backs, depending on what other running backs you have or need in a draft. But he's definitely probably going to be a late second or early third round pick, I would think. Just especially with we don't know what quarterback's going to be giving the ball to him and throwing the ball to him. That could change things as well in Pittsburgh. I know when it came in our league, when a dynasty league, when we had the rookie draft, I had the first pick and I said that was the guy I was going for right off the bat, just because I knew that he was going to end up being a star there in Pittsburgh and what he had coming out of it, coming from college. So he obviously hasn't hit his ceiling. He's a rookie. We don't really know what he have for him for coming years, but for a rookie to get 1,200 yards, that's a lot right off the bat. I mean, if he grows on it each year and gets better, he could be a 14, 15, 1,600-yard rusher by the time he's 2-3 years in the league.
Especially if he can improve on that average per attempt. He's under 4, but if he can get that, they can work on that offensive line and get that up a little bit. But like you said, it's going to depend on what they do at the quarterback position. Jeremy, thoughts on Harris in his rookie year there in Pittsburgh?
Oh, man, it's an amazing rookie year. This kid's gotten man, there were people that were calling him a bust and overrated and said the Steelers were stupid for taking him. And I think that's a joke. He's when are people going to learn? Alabama running backs.
Right.
Stop betting against them. I mean, they obviously draft the best out of high school. They know what they're doing and they coach them well. And they're just great players. He's always been special to me. Like in college, I loved him. I don't know how people slept on him. He's just getting started. This is going to be a superstar running back in the NFL. And with Ben Gunn, depending on how fast and who they get in there, the offense is going to feature him. He's going to be the featured player in this offense. And the Steelers will rebuild that line. We know they will because we know how that franchise operates. So when they get that offensive line back up and running and that system back up and running, can you even imagine what this kid's going to do? It's going to be off the charts. So, especially in the dynasty league, that was a smart pick because there might be a little of a struggle next year. But man, once they fix everything and get rolling again, this kid, he might be the number 1 running back in the NFL. It's possible. Although there are 2 very special players, we both know. Well, you all know, he's going to be a very special guy to have on your team. In a legacy league next year, definitely top 5, definitely. Great ceiling. He might have a little trouble if they don't get a good quarterback in there. Like based on what happens at quarterback, that could create a little bit of a hiccup. But man, I wouldn't mind betting on him in long term in a legacy type league. Oh, you really got to be happy to have this kid on your roster.
Yeah, I had first and second pick in our dynasty league, and he was my number 1, and was my number 2. We'll talk about that when we get to that position, but I think him and Deontay Johnson are definitely what they're going to build around there. Juju Smith and Claypool, I'm not really sure about with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I definitely think they got to build around the offensive line, like you said. I think I saw a statistic somewhere that Najee Harris was the most touched running back behind the line of scrimmage this year for the amount of times he was touching the backfield and hitting the backfield. So, like you said, can you imagine if they didn't have him getting hit in the backfield as much as he did? And his rush attempts, imagine if he had 300 rush attempts with 4.5 or a 5 or 4 point, close to a 5 average yardage, what could be about that? So I think there's a lot to build on with him.
Yep, agreed. So let's keep moving here. Coming in at number 2, We had Austin Eckler from the Chargers. We had him projected 8th overall. He finished 2nd. We had him. Some of the differences here. We projected 9 touchdowns. He scored 20. So, guys, thoughts on Eckler there with the Chargers?
He's a stud every year. He's top 5 running back in the league. I mean, almost 17, almost a little over 1,500 yards overall. We were pretty close on reception wise for him. He blew it apart with 20 touchdowns. We predicted 9. I mean,
Yeah.
He blew it apart with the touchdowns. I think he had 2 games where he had 3 touchdowns alone in them. So he definitely is a fantasy draft or like top 5 picks for sure. I wouldn't be shocked if you ever see him go past 5th overall in the draft, just for the fact of what numbers can come about him in the season, with especially Justin Herbert throwing the ball to him. There's a lot to come about it for sure, but he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. He's far from it. I think he's honestly a 2,000-yard overall running back in his prime. And I think that we could see that in the next 2 to 3 years where he hits 2,000 total yards of rushing and receiving.
Yeah. Jeremy, thoughts on Eckler there with the Chargers?
Yeah, it's another guy in a perfect situation, right? I mean, the Chargers are only going to get better. You know, they got a very special quarterback, and that offense is just going to become more and more potent. And he is a versatile, strong cog in that offense. He's the guy that creates the problems because we got a great quarterback. We got to cover the receivers. We got to worry about how we're going to stop this quarterback. And this is the guy that you just don't. How is the defense going to match up and have the manpower to stop this guy when you have to worry about stopping potentially the best passing quarterback in the league moving forward? So he's just in a great situation. He's the perfect talent, versatile, everything that an offense like that, you know, just a perfect nightmare for defenses. And he's going to put up points. He's just going to keep scoring points. He's going to be a big part of the NFL over the next bunch of years. I agree. And again, it's always the barring injury, obviously, but this is he's worth that top 5 running back ranking, and will continue to be in that top 5. So you know, he's a high draft pick in fantasy. He's a guy that's going to be heavily pursued, and whoever has him on their roster is going to feel very, very good about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. He's definitely he's got a far way yet to hit his ceiling, and he's definitely worth it for any pick that you make. Like you said, barring injuries, that would be the only reason why he wouldn't be worth having.
Yeah, agreed. So that brings us to our number 1 running back, and that ended up being Jonathan Taylor this year. We were way off on his yards and touchdowns. Again, we had him projected at 11 touchdowns. He scored 20. Yards, we had him at 1,200. He ended up with 1,800. But guys, thoughts on Taylor's breakout year?
He's just got phenomenal power to move the ball as much as he does. I mean, he puts his head down, and you're going to be hurting on the other side of the ball. And he also has great breakout speed. Once he gets out in open space, it's hard to catch up to him. So I like it from that aspect. I think he's definitely going to be, barring any injuries, obviously, again, him probably the number 1 running back. I'm thinking him and Henry are probably going to battle it out for years to come on who's the number 1 running back. But I'm pretty sure it's Taylor's only 2nd year in the league.
Yeah, I believe so.
And he's already he almost had a 2,000-yard rushing year already in his 2nd year. So give him time, and he could definitely build on that, I think, for sure, and only get better as his career goes on.
It'll be interesting to see what Indianapolis does at the quarterback position as well. But Jeremy, thoughts on Taylor?
He'd be my number 1 pick if I had the first pick of the draft. I can't say more than that, right?
Right. So, man, yeah. So that was our top 20.